What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stuckey.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
Whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports,
we are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
Welcome to Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. I'm your host, Nick Giffen, predictive analyst here at Action Network. And joining me, my co-host, Stephen Young of Roto Grinders, better known as Stevie TPFL. And this week, we're talking bets for the Coke Zero Sugar 400 at Daytona International Speedway here on Running Hot. Last weekend at Michigan, Tyler Reddick was able to take the lead back from William Byron on an overtime restart, a double overtime restart at that, and grab his second win of the season. William Byron did end up finishing second. I had him, Stevie, at 18-1, and Ty Gibbs, our victory lane pick, Stevie, 22-1, finished third. So pretty close there, but no cigar on the picks. What were your thoughts on the Michigan race? Thought it was a really good race personally.
Oh, I thought it was great. I think that there's a lot of stuff going on. Fast cars. The thing that we have to figure out with the next-gen car in general, and even going back to the last generation car, is so tough to pass the leader. Like, we saw, what was it, Denny and Larson battling at the beginning of the race, and, like, Denny was a lot faster than Larson, just couldn't pass him. And then it was Bubba, right? Bubba made that awesome move to make it 3 wide, but yeah, I mean, I thought the Michigan race was great. I mean, I could have done without some cautions. But, yeah, I mean, overall, I thought the racing was great. I think the right car won the race. I think Tyler Reddick was the best car at the end of that race. So, yeah, I mean, Michigan was great. I'm very happy with Michigan and really mad at myself. We were doing the podcast last week and bet Reddick for a top 5, and I was like, man, the value, I just don't know. And I just couldn't pull the trigger on the outright, and I still kicking myself for that one. Was like 10-1 or 11-1 or something.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was like in the double digits, but by the time it got around to the weekend, it was into the single digits. Or I should say, by the time I got to when we were recording the podcast, it was down in the single digits. And so I didn't end up betting his outright, even though I did like him a lot. It just was one of those, like, couldn't quite get there on the number because my model wasn't quite as high as the market was. And that's how it goes, though. But yeah, I thought Michigan was a great race. A lot of passing. Again, hard to pass the leader, as you mentioned, but a lot of passing overall. We had tires matter at Michigan, which was cool, but it wasn't like Richmond where they just fall off completely. So, Michigan is a 2-mile track like old Auto Club was. We're getting to the point now with Michigan where tires are going to matter, and as the track continues to age more and more, it becomes more and more like Auto Club was when it was a high tire where 2-mile track. We're not there yet, just saying. Definitely when we go back to Michigan next year, something to keep in mind is tires mattered. We also saw the blowover for Corey LaJoie. NASCAR is going to add a piece there to help prevent blowovers in those spin type of situations there. Glad Corey LaJoie is okay. But we got to talk Daytona. This is the second to last race of the regular season, meaning it is the second to last chance for a driver to win his way into the playoffs. That's going to be the big theme of this race. As you know, Stevie, win and you're in, and almost every single driver in this field can win this race. So especially all of the likely playoff contenders. So definitely going to be a chaotic race here at Daytona. What are you expecting from this one?
I'm actually kind of expecting a lot of strategy. We go back to the 500 and we're like, it was kind of a strategy race. And I think that Toyota probably had the best strategy. They just wrecked each other when we go back to that race. So I think we're going to see a lot of strategy, when to pit, how to save fuel when you're trying to pit, and like saving fuel so you put less fuel in when you pit. So I think the last place you want to be is out front for Daytona this weekend. I don't think you want to be leading the packs because you're going to have to put in more fuel and it's going to hurt you track position wise. So I think the racing's going to be great. I think we're going to see a lot of aggressiveness. I think we're going to see a lot more 3-wide racing than we saw at the 500. It's the last weekend where an underdog could win to get in. We're going to go to Darlington next weekend. It's the last week of the regular season next week. But, I mean, let's be honest. Outside of maybe like Erik Jones next weekend, these guys that are in the bottom half of points are not going to have a chance to win the race. It's going to be a top-end car that's going to win next weekend. Maybe Erik Jones. Like, he's really good at Darlington. That's why I keep bringing him up. But so it's the last weekend where, like, a Todd Gilliland or a Michael McDowell has a chance to win a race. And, you know, you have to, first of all, be on the right strategy and be aggressive on strategy, but you have to be aggressive on the racetrack, you know? Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is a guy that comes to mind when you think of aggressiveness. And, I mean, I think you're going to see the guys that are on the bubble try to point race and not maybe be uber aggressive, but I still think at the end of the day, those guys probably want to try to win this race too, because the point race has become very, very close now.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. There's going to be a lot of strategy, and I've already thought a lot about this when making my picks, the strategy in this. But again, once it comes down to stage 3, it's not every driver for himself, but it's most of the drivers for themselves. They want to win to get in. I mean, Justin Haley, Erik Jones, Ryan Preece, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Noah Gragson, Josh Berry, Carson Hocevar, Michael McDowell, Todd Gilliland. All these drivers are not locked into the playoffs. Austin Dillon potentially. Kyle Busch, we didn't mention him, Chase Briscoe. There's so many guys that are not in the playoffs. Then we have our bubble drivers, our Bubba Wallaces, our Ross Chastains, our Chris Buschers that would love nothing more than to get a win, to not have to worry about points racing next week. Ty Gibbs as well. And then we have Martin Truex Jr. Martin Truex Jr., in my opinion, Stevie, is going to ride around. He's going to do the Joey Logano 2022 Talladega strategy, the second to last race before a cutoff, leave more than 60 points ahead of at least 2 of the bubble drivers, and he's locked in.
Yep.
So I think if you're Joe Gibbs Racing, your whole goal this weekend is to get the 54 in victory lane and the 19 in on points. If you're 23-11, your whole goal is to get Bubba Wallace in. And that includes, I'm including Denny Hamlin, since he said he'd rather push Bubba than Gibbs last year. We're in the same situation this year. But as the alternative, Denny Hamlin's going to want to push Gibbs in. So I think there's some strategy there. I think there's some strategy around the Fords. Certainly want to get Chris Buescher in if possible. But we've got Ford teammates, Todd Gilliland, Michael McDowell, Harrison Burton, that are all Penske affiliated. Maybe something could work out there with those guys. So a lot of things to think about, Stevie.
Yeah, I mean, does Ford focus, Mike, this is like a question that I just have when I was thinking about it. Does Ford focus more on Stewart Haas this weekend or Todd Gilliland? Like the Ford backing. Buescher, don't get me wrong. Buescher, if you're a Ford driver and you're Ford focused, like Buescher is the number one focus this weekend. I don't disagree with you at all in that aspect. I'm just saying, like, I think Ford would rather have Todd Gilliland than Michael McDowell win the race, just being honest. And then I think Ford would rather have Todd Gilliland than like Chase Briscoe. We have Ford drivers moving away from Ford. So I think you have to think about that process. Like, Ford might back Gragson more than they back like a Michael McDowell this weekend. They might have a little bit better engine. It's something that you have to think about, because we're in silly season time. We know some of these guys are leaving Ford, and we already kind of know. We talked about it last week on the podcast. Like, Michael McDowell is not getting the same support as he was. They're getting locked out of meetings, basically. So, I'm focusing on that kind of stuff because I think it's very important. And I think the Chevy importance right now is Kyle Busch and Ross Chastain, if you're curious about where I think Chevy's at. So those meetings happen. Those meetings 100% happen. There's a lot of money involved in making the playoffs for the teams and for the manufacturers.
Yeah, I agree with you. 100% agree with all of that, what you just said. So definitely things to think about. And our picks are geared towards all of what we just talked about as well. I might even audible like a fifth turn in here or something. I got so many picks I like this weekend, Stevie. It's going to be
so many pre-qualifying and like bets this week. It's ridiculous. It's the most. And like we say this every time we go to Daytona and Talladega, there's just so much value And I feel like this race in particular, right before the playoffs, is one of the best value betting races we have. And like you messaged me yesterday, you're like, I have so many bets this week. And it's just like, there's just so much like pre-qualifying value, and there's going to be pre-race value too. It's a really good week to take some shots.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. So this is going to be one of those races where a lot of interesting dynamics are going on, and we're using all of the strategy, the playoff scenarios, etc., to our advantage. But it is time to dive into some bets. As always, we're going to take you for a lap around Daytona. 4 turns, 1 pick from Stevie, 1 pick from me before we drive into victory lane. So let's throw the green flag on the Coke Zero Sugar 400 and dive into turn 1. All right, turn 1, Stevie. Right off the bat, we're going to one of those situations we just talked about. Todd Gilliland, what you got?
Yeah, I'm going to bet him I already bet him at 50-1 on BetMGM. I did a quarter unit. I don't typically bet like full units on these like long shot bets just in general. I think he's going to have a lot of Ford backing this week. I feel like Front Row Motorsports, they made a very good commitment with Ford, and the shift has gone. We've seen the shift. The shift has happened. The shift has gone to Todd Gilliland over Michael McDowell. It's happening in front of our eyes, and I think that he's going to have a car capable of winning this weekend. And Todd Gilliland, he's like one of those guys where I feel like he's starting to figure out super speedway racing a little bit more. He's being a little bit more aggressive in these races and trying to run more towards the front. The shift has happened on super speedway races. You can't just ride around the back and win the race anymore. You have to be up in the pack to try to win these races with this new car. I think Todd Gilliland is a threat to win this race. I've bet a lot of Todd Gilliland stuff this week in general. I have another Todd Gilliland bet that I'll talk about here in a few minutes. But Todd Gilliland, 50-1, BetMGM, quarter of a unit is where my turn 1 pick is this week.
I agree with you, and I am on that exact same bet as well. Todd Gilliland, 50-1 to win at BetMGM. I'm going to add in to this turn 1 pick of yours, Todd Gilliland, top Ford, 25-1. Todd Gilliland to win the pole, 28-1. And I'm going to throw in some more pole bets here, Stevie. I've kind of changed this turn 1 here on the fly. I'm also going to add Austin Cindric to win the pole, 12-1. I'm going to take Ryan Blaney, 9.5-1. Joey Logano, 7-1. You see what I'm doing here? I'm taking all the Penske's and the Penske affiliates. Michael McDowell, 7-1. I'm on the fence about that one, given, what we've been talking about. But he did win the pole at Atlanta. He did win the pole at Talladega, and he was on the front row with Logano at Daytona. So all 3 drafting track races, Michael McDowell has started on the front row. What do you think it's 7-1 on him? I'm asking you on this one.
7-1, you said?
For Michael McDowell to win the pole.
Oh, I mean, he'd probably be my least favorite of the group, but I mean, he's still like, he's fast, right? They're going to be fast. Nick, it's the same concerns I had last week. I'm really concerned about McDowell and the Ford relationship. Like, it doesn't sound like Front Row wanted McDowell to leave. So, from everything that I've heard, and I mean, listen, 7-1, sure. I mean, I like the Penske bets. You were talking about those Penske. I was distracted because I was looking them up to bet them, because I'm with you on those. I think those are very, very interesting. And hey, I needed another Todd Gilliland bet. So I would put McDowell probably at the bottom of my list personally. But I mean, I am so concerned about the Ford relationship at a track where engine matters. Like you want to make that extra five extra horsepower is the difference between winning this race and not winning the race.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at this, right? Penske 1-2. Well, I'm counting Michael McDowell and Todd Gilliland as Penske's for the relationship that they have. Penske 1-2 at Daytona. Penske 1-2 in qualifying at Atlanta. Penske 1-2-3 qualifying at Talladega. So you got to bet the Penske's for the pole. You got to bet the Penske's. So if you want to throw in Michael McDowell, throw him in. If you don't. I haven't thrown him in yet. On the fence, but all the other Penske's. Todd Gilliland, I'm counting as a Penske. Joey Logano, Ryan Blaney, Austin Cindric, pole bets. And then I threw in, like you said, Todd Gilliland, top Ford, 25-1. Todd Gilliland in that pole bet there, 28-1. So a lot of stuff here in turn 1, but I would have had to create a fifth turn if I wanted to bet Gilliland's, top Ford separately and then all those pole bets separately. And we don't have 5 turns at Daytona. Well, kind of got that, start finish dog leg. But that's turn 1. Turn 1, we're on Todd Gilliland and we're on Penske to win the pole plus Todd Gilliland. Let's dive into turn 2. Whew. All right, Stevie, turn 2. I already made this bet, so I'm right there with you as well for your turn 2 pick. What do you got?
Yeah, I originally had a top 10 bet here, and I'm just going to give it out anyway. Justin Haley, top 10 at 5-1. I bet that. But my turn 2 official pick is Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 40-1. Going back-to-back outrights here. This is another quarter unit bet for me. Stenhouse is aggressive, and he's going to finish inside the top 5, competing for a win at the end of the race, or he's going to be wrecked and not even in the conversation. And that's exactly what we want. We don't necessarily always look at speed when it comes to Daytona and Talladega. We are looking at other metrics a lot more than speed. But when we look at Daytona with the next-gen car, he ranks first in speed by a large margin over some of these other cars. And it's because Ricky Stenhouse Jr. has figured out the art of being aggressive passing while making a lot of speed. And it's an aggressive pass. He's not afraid to make the pass. And he's one of my favorites as like an underdog to win. I mean, he has to be every time. He has multiple wins at super speedways in multiple different cars in multiple packages. And again, it's like, I don't want to say it's like the Ricky Bobby effect of like first or last, but I feel like that's what Stenhouse is. He's going to be aggressive, and can those aggressive moves pay off? And if they don't pay off, he probably ends up with a wrecked race car. So I think I love the upside here for Stenhouse at this number. So this is one that, like you said, I just jumped on it right when I saw it, and it's almost a staple for me now at super speedways. Anything over like 30-1 for Stenhouse.
Exactly what I was going to say. 30-1 or longer, you bet Ricky Stenhouse at super speedways. The first bet I made of the week was Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 40-1. For my turn 2 pick, I'm going to go to those top 10 bets, and I do like that Justin Haley top 10 at 5-1. So if you're able to get that, throw it in there as well, because this is a race where all these back markers, I shouldn't say back markers, but these lower tier cars can finish in the top 10 with the chaos. So I'm going to take Daniel Hemrick, Zane Smith, and Carson Hocevar, all for top 10s at 7-1. I'm putting a unit on each because all I need is one of these guys to hit to have a nice profit. And then I'm going to throw in, Stevie, Parker Retzlaff for a top 10 at 20-1. A little sprinkle here, maybe quarter unit or less. But here's the thing with Parker Retzlaff. He's been really good at drafting style racing in his limited career. He's finished 3rd, 4th, and 7th in a Jordan Anderson Xfinity car in super speedway Daytona races. He finished 7th at Talladega in the Jordan Anderson Xfinity car. And he has had a 5th place finish at Atlanta as well, which is the, kind of the 1.5 mile pseudo speedway, as I call it, but still a drafting track. So we just saw Parker Retzlaff run at Richmond in the 66 MBM Motorsports car. And while he did finish last of those that, didn't have any issues, he kept pace with the next car in front of him, which I think is very important because that 66 is usually multiple seconds off the pace, or at least a second off the pace. And he was keeping pace with the other back markers at Richmond. Now he's going to be in the number 62 Beard Motorsports Chevy, which is super important because that number 62 car has been driven into the top 10 by guys like Brendan Gaughan. Noah Gregson's had good runs in that car. Anthony Alfredo has had good runs in that car. So Parker Retzlaff, 20-1 for a top 10 finish. And then, like I said, Daniel Hemrick, Zane Smith, Carson Hocevar, 7-1 for top 10s, all because this race can turn out chaotic. We can get the big wreck. Hey, Stevie, there's rain in the forecast. You know what happened last time there was rain in the forecast at Daytona for a late summer race? The whole field wrecked because a pop-up shower came out and NASCAR couldn't get the yellow out in time.
I don't think that happens again. They have been
so,
very careful with that stuff. As someone that lives 20 minutes from the Speedway in Daytona, it rains here every day. Just wanted to Florida knowledge on you. But Yeah, so I'm huge on Hocevar this week. He is one that I really like, and it's going back to our aggressiveness like talk, right? Like Carson Hocevar in nature is just an aggressive driver. So I have bet this at 7-1 for a top 10 as well. I also, as soon as books open, got him at 100-1 to win the race. So nice. I would love for him to pull out a win. My bankroll would definitely like it. So yeah, very high on Hocevar. I like the Zane Smith call. I like the Retzlaff call. Hemrick is one that I can't get behind him, man. I am just not a Daniel Hemrick person. Like he's not an aggressive race car driver. Maybe that helps him, right?
That helps
so
him, right?
it's the flip side. Yeah, it's the flip side. He stays back because he's not aggressive, and then he runs up and finishes inside the top 10. I mean, we've done it with like Ty Dillon, Cody Ware, these drivers where we get top 10s because of a lot of chaos that happens at the end of the race. So, okay, maybe I can be sold on Hemrick. I'm not a Daniel Hemrick guy.
I'm not either, but at 7-1, I mean, he's going to finish inside the top 10 better than 1 out of every 7 times at super speedways. He has a 5th at Talladega in his Cup career. He has a 9th at Talladega in his Cup career. And so, a 12th at Daytona in his first year with Kaulig in 2022, where he's doing that partial schedule, which is pretty close to a top 10. So it's enough there at 7-1, where I think better than 12.5% of the time he finishes inside the top 10. So 2 turns down, 2 turns to go. We're going to head down the backstretch towards turn 3. But before we get there, I want to remind you all, Running Hot is presented by BetMGM. Use bonus code ACTION when signing up to get up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet does not win. For new users in Arizona, Colorado, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, New Jersey, North Carolina, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and Wyoming. Terms and conditions apply. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, backstretch complete. Let's dive into turn 3. All right, pushing you into turn 3 here, Stevie. What do you got for us? I see you're leading off with Michael McDowell.
So this is my favorite bet when it comes to Daytona and Talladega, and one of my most profitable bets. And it's just a bet type, right? And you're going to talk about it in this turn. I've already bet all the ones that you're about to talk about as well. It's taking long shot cars to be the top Ford, and I don't love McDowell, but I do love McDowell at 10-1 to be the top Ford. I like Gilliland at 25-1. You talked about him already as well. I took Josh Berry at 30-1 too, because I do think that Ford is going to be backing Josh Berry, and I think 30-1 for a Stewart-Haas car is a good number. Ryan Preece is aggressive, so I took him at 30-1 as the top Ford. And then Justin Haley. I'm a Justin Haley truther when it comes to super speedways. I think he learned a lot when he was running in the Xfinity Series with Kaulig and having AJ Allmendinger teach him a lot. So, and he's become a really, really sound super speedway racer. So all my top 4 bets, so I'm going to break it down really quick unit-wise. So I don't want everyone to think like I'm betting a unit on all these. So McDowell and Gillen are a quarter unit, and then Berry, Preece, and Haley are all 0.2 units for me. And then, like we talk about all the time, good profit if we have one of these 5 drivers hit. And you're going to talk about the next thing here. And I did the same thing, spacing out units where I'm making sure I'm giving myself a nice profit if any of these drivers finish as the top Ford.
Absolutely, yeah. I agree there. What do you think about Noah Gragson? What price would you need him to be to do this? Because he's so aggressive at these super speedways.
Yeah.
We've seen him and Ross Chastain duke it out for a win and then cost both of themselves. Noah Gregson's been in the mix in a couple of these in his Cup career.
I debated, I still might go back and bet this one. I debated this one, whether or not I wanted to add him or not. Yeah. I think his number right now at 14-1 as the top Ford is a really fair number. Yeah. I think I'm just going to go ahead and add it because I was with you though, in my head, thinking about aggressiveness and to be a top Ford, you got to be aggressive and you got to kind of get a little lucky because, I mean, the 5 Fords or the 4 Fords really between Blaney, Logano, Buescher, and Keselowski are really strong at super speedways. So you're going to have to get a little lucky, but I mean, little lucky is kind of what we're betting on here. So I will add Noah Gragson at a quarter of unit as well because I do agree.
16-1's out there.
Yeah.
So 16-1 appears to be the longest on Noah Gragson.
Which is great.
I like that one. let me give you the Noah Gragson highlights in his Cup career. A 5th at Daytona in his pre-rookie season, when he was doing a partial Beard Motorsports schedule.
That car.
9th at the Daytona 500 earlier this year. 3rd at Talladega earlier this year. And last year, when he was in that Legacy Motor Club car, he and Ross Chastain started on the front row on what should have been the last restart at Talladega, but they wrecked each other going for the win, and then there was more restarts. So, Noah Gragson has been in the mix at super speedways. So I kind of like adding him as well in this spot. For my turn, 3 pick, you alluded to this. I'm doing this with the Toyotas. I'm going to take Bubba Wallace, top Toyota, plus 450. I'm going to do 1 unit on it. Ty Gibbs, top Toyota, plus 800, half a unit. Erik Jones, top Toyota, quarter unit. And John Hunter Nemechek, top Toyota, somewhere around, a sixth of a unit, 0.15, 0.2, 0.1, depending on what you want to do and what odds you can get. But I like sizing them all to win around 4 units, give or take a little bit. So that's what I'm going to do on these guys. Now, Erik Jones, I said quarter unit, 12-1. If you want to win around 4 units, you probably would need to bump that up to maybe like 0.3 or 0.4 units in that neighborhood, a third of a unit. So just play with your sizings there. Try to win around 4 units on each of these guys. And that's what I recommend, just depending on the odds you get. But we talked about this. I am out on Martin Truex Jr. I think he rides around unless he's locked in to the point where even if he wrecks, he's locked in. He rides around. If you're Truex, you have to just ride around. You have to take what it gives you. You cannot afford to wreck out here. You absolutely can't. So Truex being like 6-1 in top Toyota markets, that is a lot of extra value where he doesn't finish top Toyota very often using this strategy. Only if he gets locked in does he use the go for it strategy. So, I mean, Truex should be top Toyota like 20-1, kind of like John Hunter Nemechek is, in my opinion. Then you have, what's the other aim for Joe Gibbs Racing? The aim for Joe Gibbs Racing, we talked about, get Ty Gibbs the win and get Truex locked in on points. So guys like Christopher Bell, guys like, Denny Hamlin, Tyler Reddick, they could all be pushing Ty Gibbs. And then you also have those same guys who could push Bubba Wallace. It just depends on the dynamic. Obviously, Denny would prefer to push Bubba than Gibbs, but if Bubba's out, he would still push Gibbs if he doesn't try to take the win himself. But there is some dynamics where if you're a team player, you could see Tyler Reddick, Christopher Bell, and Denny Hamlin all being team players and sacrificing not only the top Toyota spot, but the win to these guys to get them in, Bubba Wallace and Ty Gibbs. And then Erik Jones and John Hunter Nemechek, they need to win to get in, so they're just going to go for it. And Erik Jones, we love him. He's awesome at super speedway racing. John Hunter Nemechek, in 3 career super speedway starts, has finished 11th, 11th, and 7th. So he knows how to get some decent finishes in the Cup Series at these races as well.
Yeah, so I'm with you on this. I am with you on the Martin Truex take. I don't see a way or a reason. And again, we are sitting behind a computer, but I mean, mathematically, it makes 0 sense for Martin Truex Jr. to race for stage points this week and potentially wreck. And then there's not a way for him to lock in, I don't think, for this race, unless I think a lot of stuff happens to like Gibbs, Buescher, and those guys. Because a new winner definitely makes the race even tighter. So I think if you're Martin Truex Jr., you're super happy with a top 20 and not wrecking this week. And
even a 27th, I think that's what Joey Logano got 2 years ago, and he was almost in this exact same point situation.
Yeah,
got 27th and was pretty much clear in the final race of the 2022. I think it was the second round of the playoffs. So I think that's what you got to do with Truex. Just take what the race gives you.
And like the people will make the argument, well, it's his last Daytona race. No, it's not. I mean, if Martin Truex Jr. wants to race the Daytona 500, 2311 will field a car for him. I mean, it's already been said. So there's a good chance we see Martin Truex Jr. at the Daytona 500 next year, and he gets one more chance at a 500. So like, don't have the mindset of like, oh, well, this is his last Daytona race. Like, it has been said multiple times that Joe Gibbs will help 2311 put Martin Truex Jr. in a car if he wants to run any race next year. So don't have the mindset of, oh, he's done after this race at Daytona. It's just that's not the case.
Yeah, I agree with you. So top Toyotas for me, top Fords for Stevie as our turn 3, that means we got one more turn, and that's turn 4. All right, final turn. Stevie here. You're going with one of my top Toyota bets, but in a different market. What do you got?
Yeah, I'm not missing it. Listen, I am committed. I am not missing it. Ty Gibbs, 35-1 to win this race. Again, I'm committed to making sure I bet Ty Gibbs when he wins. It's a great scenario for a potential win here. I think Toyota can be really aggressive with their strategy. And again, we talked about it earlier. I really do think they were on the best strategy for the 500, and they just wrecked each other. So they got to clean that stuff up, obviously. But I think that we know that Ty Gibbs is a focus for JGR. We know that Bubba is a focus. I've bet both of their outrights because I do think, like, those are the two cars that Toyota want to win this race with. I think there's a lot of value to betting Bubba and Ty Gibbs outrights. You know, Bubba's line is a little bit tougher to bet because it's just moving up. We're losing value on that one. But Ty Gibbs, 35-1, all that nonsense out the window. I think that he is going to be a focus. And then for that reason, I want to have his outright at 35-1.
I'm in. You sold me. I'm in.
Yeah,
I haven't bet it yet. I'm in. And that part of that is because of my turn 4 picks as well. You mentioned Bubba. I like him. Got a couple creative ways to play Bubba Wallace. So let's go to my turn 4 pick, Steve, and then we'll discuss all of this. So my turn 4 pick, I'm going to take some exactas. Now, you're going to have to shop to find these, but I'm going to take Chris Buescher to finish first, Brad Keselowski to finish second at 50-1. I'm going to take Bubba Wallace to finish first, spoil alert. Bubba Wallace to finish first, Denny Hamlin to finish second at 90-1. And I'm going to take Bubba Wallace to finish first and Tyler Reddick to finish second at 125-1. This is a way to get a little bit longer odds on Bubba Wallace, thinking either his car owner or his teammate will push him to victory. Similar for Chris Buescher. I really like Chris Buescher this weekend, but Brad Keselowski pushing him to the win, as he did last year. Remember, this was a 1-2 finish last year for RFK Racing at this very race, with Brad Keselowski pushing Chris Buescher to the win. If they can do that again, that would be great. That's 50-1. 2022, Tyler Reddick pushed Austin Dillon to the win after everybody else wrecked out. So 2 years in a row in this race, we have had teammates pushing each other to the win with, definite implications for playoffs, at least in the 2022 one. In the 2023 one, Buescher was still locked in. But teammates are the story of the day here. Ordinarily, I wouldn't make these bets, but because of the high correlation factor, I'm okay making these bets. If you think about it, right, let's say Bubba Wallace is around 20-1 to win and Denny Hamlin's around 15-1 to win. Normally, fair odds parlays on that would be like 300-1, and we're only getting 90-1. But there's a massive correlation factor here. So I'd like these bets, even though they aren't technically a value, because it's not really baking in correlation. And I don't really have a way to bake in the correlation of teammates like that. So it's just going to be something we're gambling on. So these are like funsy bets. We're gambling, Stevie. And that I don't have to do that with Ty Gibbs because he's 35-1 and they're not offering exactas on him because he's further down the odds board and they don't want to offer like 300-1 exactas. So there are no exactas available on Ty Gibbs. So I'll take his outright and pair it with these exactas.
Yeah, I mean, I love funsy bets at Daytona and Talladega. We talk about it all the time. I was going to ask you what the Gibbs Bell number was, but like you said, there's no Gibbs ones. That would be the correlation that I'd be looking at if I was going to do it with Gibbs. But my favorite one that you mentioned is Bubba Hamlin. Hamlin has not been secret about pushing Bubba to win at all. I mean, I would assume Michael Jordan's going to be there this weekend, and it's a huge, again, financially, it's huge to make the playoffs for these teams and manufacturers. So Bubba's the focus for 23-11 for sure. And Tyler Reddick is one of the best teammates in the garage. And we saw that with Austin Dillon, like you said, a couple years ago. Like, if Tyler Reddick can help Bubba this weekend, he's going to help Bubba because, I mean, they're just – those two guys are a lot closer than I think people realize. So I think that these are fun. I like these. These are funsy bets.
Yeah, so that'll do it for our lap around Daytona. That means there is only one thing left to do. Stevie, we've got to drive into victory lane, and I love this pick. You love this pick. It was, along with Stenhouse, my first bet of the week. What is it, Stevie?
I mean, it's Erik Jones to win the race. I mean, you can get this at 40-1 right now. And we talked about funsy bets. I don't think this is a funsy bet. I literally think that Erik Jones has a legit chance to win this race. And he's shown the ability to win this race before. And he is a guy that has super speedway experience with speed. And like, if we look at, he's finished inside the top 10 in two Daytona races with the next gen car. And again, I think Toyota was on the right strategy when they wrecked themselves. So I think that Toyota is going to do something very similar as far as pitting early and trying to stretch out fuel and, you know, not using as much fuel and running in packs and stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I like Erik Jones. I know you like him, and this is one that you and I are very high on. I just really quickly want to say that if Erik Jones opens anything 25-1 or better next week at Darlington, it's an insta bet for me because we're doing the show on Wednesday next week. But I just want to throw that out there right now. Like, I am betting Erik Jones 25-1 or better instantly for Darlington next week.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's his best track. You got to. And speaking of the super speedways, Daytona's been really kind to Erik Jones. He's got a win here in this very race several years ago, not when it was a playoff cutoff race, but more midsummer. He's won a Clash back when the Clash was here. And he's led a bunch of laps both here and Talladega. He and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. did a great job working together earlier this year, which was really encouraging to see those two work together because they were just pushing 1-2 on the bottom lane for a lot. I think it was of the Daytona 500. It may have been the Talladega race. It was one of those two for sure, where they were just riding 1-2 on the bottom, pushing each other. Perfect dynamic of being able to hold the lead while running 1-2. So I love these two drivers. I think they're fantastic. Both Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and Erik Jones. They were my first two bets of the week. So Erik Jones, 40-1, our victory lane pick for the Coke Zero Sugar 400. That is going to do it for us. Thank you for listening to the Coke Zero Sugar 400 episode of Running Hot, Action Network's motorsports betting podcast. We'll be back next week as we talk bets for the Southern 500, another crown jewel race at Darlington. On behalf of my co-host, Stephen Young, thanks again for listening. We'll see you back here next week on Running Hot from Action Network.